All right, today we're jumping into a real historical head-scratcher. We're talking about a case where a violent enforcer, basically overnight, flips and becomes the #1 champion for the very people he was trying to wipe out. So how does that happen? Let's dig in.
I mean, think about it. This is probably one of the most sudden, most baffling, and honestly most important personality flips in all of ancient history. The real question here isn't just what happened, it's how could it possibly have happened? It's like a historical cold case, and it really makes you question what it takes to completely change a person.
Okay, so our main character here is a man named Saul of Tarsus. Picture this. It's the early 1st century. He's this incredibly passionate Pharisee, a real up-and-comer, and he's made a name for himself by being totally ruthless in his opposition to this new, and from his perspective, really dangerous religious movement.
And look, we don't even have to speculate about his intentions. We have a confession straight from the man himself. He flat out says his mission was one of violent destruction. We're not talking about a guy who was just getting into heated debates. No, he was actively hunting people down.
And this is what's so staggering. The scale of this change, it's just off the charts. This wasn't some slow, gradual evolution of his beliefs. It was an instant 180-degree U-turn. The guy enforcing violence becomes a pacifist. The man obsessed with keeping people out suddenly becomes a champion for bringing everyone in. It's a total, complete rewrite of his entire identity.
So that leads us right to the heart of the mystery, right? What on earth could cause something like that? What kind of force, whether it's from the inside or the outside, is powerful enough to just completely erase someone's core beliefs and behaviors in a flash? That's the question we're trying to answer today.
All right, to crack this case, we have to look at the evidence. And the crucial clue isn't just that he changed, it's what he changed into. See, he adopted this very specific, really unusual set of ethics. You can think of it like an ethical fingerprint, something so distinctive and so rare, it's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so scholars have a name for this, the Cruciform ethical complex. Now don't let the fancy name fool you. It's not just a random list of good deeds. It's a connected system of 4 key ideas, and they all circle around this one central concept, the power of voluntary transformative suffering.
So let's dust for prints, shall we? Here are the 4 components. First, a serious commitment to nonviolence. Second, not just tolerating your enemies but actively loving them. Third, submitting to the authorities, even when it's going to hurt you. And fourth, radically welcoming in the outcasts of society. Now look, any one of these is pretty rare, but all 4 showing up together in one person all at once, that's the unique pattern we're talking about. That's our fingerprint.
Okay, so the big question is, where did this code come from? Did Paul just make it up out of thin air, or did he get it from one of the big philosophies floating around at the time? Well, let's line up the usual suspects and see if any of them fit the bill.
Now, when we put this ethical fingerprint up against the other major philosophies, you can see the problem right away. Take Stoicism, for example. It's all about enduring hardship through emotional detachment, which is really different from Paul's active, engaged love. Or look at Buddhism. It teaches this amazing universal compassion, sure, but it doesn't have that super specific command to love your personal enemies to try and change them. See? Neither of them is a complete match for all 4 points of our fingerprint.
And that's the real kicker. The motivation is completely different. Paul's new way of life was all about actively engaging with the world, even his enemies, to transform them through love. These other systems, they're mostly about finding inner peace by detaching from the world. It's a totally different goal. They just don't fit the profile. Okay, so if the big philosophies of the day don't explain the evidence, it's time to turn to our prime suspect, and that would be the very person whose followers Saul was hunting down in the first place.
So, let's check the evidence against our prime suspect, point by point. We'll start with nonviolence. This quote here is from what historians call the Q source, which is one of our absolute earliest windows into what Jesus taught. And what does it say? It commands this radical, active form of nonviolent resistance. That's a bullseye, a perfect match.
All right, next point on the fingerprint. Actively loving your persecutors. And again, from that same early source, the command couldn't be clearer. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I mean, that's not a gentle suggestion. That is a direct command. That's another perfect match.
Okay, how about radical inclusion? Well, for Jesus, this wasn't just some nice idea. It's what he did. His practice of open commensality, which is basically just a fancy way of saying he ate with everybody, especially tax collectors, sinners, the people everyone else pushed away, was one of the most talked about, most controversial things he did. It was a direct challenge to the way things were.
So that's match number 3.
And finally, that last point, submission to authority. You know, when it came to the ultimate test, his own execution, the story goes that he lived it out perfectly. He submitted to the authorities, he told his followers not to fight back, and he even prayed for the people executing him. This isn't just him teaching an idea, it's him living it out. It's a full demonstration.
So, there you have it. 4 for 4. Every single piece of that rare, unique cruciform ethical complex that Saul suddenly took on is found directly in what the historical Jesus taught and how he lived. The ethical fingerprint is an identical match.
So let's recap. We've got a persecutor who becomes a promoter. We have a very unique ethical fingerprint left at the scene of the transformation. And we have a prime suspect whose own teachings and actions are a perfect match for that fingerprint. So what's the verdict?
Well, when you look at all the evidence, the most logical conclusion, and this is a historical argument, not necessarily a supernatural one, is that Saul's insane transformation was caused by a genuine, powerful encounter with this unique ethical pattern that Jesus taught and lived.
And it just makes sense when you lay it out step by step, right? You've got this violent persecutor who suddenly adopts this incredibly specific 4-part ethical code. We checked other philosophies, they don't fit. But the teachings of the historical Jesus? A perfect match. The conclusion, then, is that the encounter is simply the best explanation we have for this radical change.
And you have to understand, this wasn't just him changing his mind about a few things. As scholars like Jeremy Gabrielson put it was really the death of an identity. The violent Saul, the persecutor, he was gone. And in his place was a completely new person whose entire existence was now shaped by this cruciform pattern.
And that really leaves us with a pretty stunning final thought, doesn't it? If this ethical pattern is so rare and so powerful that it can completely transform a person like this, what does that tell us about the kinds of ideas that truly have the power to shape history? It really shows how a single, coherent set of ideas can be so compelling that it can stop a man dead in his tracks and, in the end, change the entire world.